Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the tier list for the 8.15 AD carries. If you haven't checked it out yet, be sure to check out the support tier list. I have that linked in the Google Doc, which you can find in the description of this video, which is great. If you don't have time to watch the whole thing, you can skip around to your favorite parts. And then I'll also have timestamps in the description as well to help you navigate. And then if you haven't looked at the top 5 tips for climbing an elo, be sure to check that out. I have that linked as well. It's kind of like the greatest hits on the channel. It covers a little bit of everything from macro, micro, itemization, objective control, wave management, just all kinds of stuff you would need to know to succeed in solo queue. And it's got nice little timestamps, chapters, and a Google Doc as well. So lots of good information there. If you do look at the Google Doc for this, you'll also find a link for each of the top 15 champions that I'm going to cover, and this will include a link to the League Wikia, which sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. It's been a little squirrely the last couple of weeks, but that can tell you, all of the stats about the champion, the history of how they've changed, and things like that. Looks like this is not gonna work right now, unfortunately. I don't know what's up with this page, or if it's my computer or what, but I've had a little bit of a tough time accessing that, but it's been a great resource in the past. So I just linked that there. So if it does work, good. If not, whatever. Now I've got recommended runes and recommended items for the champions. I also have a rating system here. It's just a simple 1 to 5 scale, 1 being one of the worst champions in the position at whatever that, metric is, and then 5 being one of the best at that metric. So lane pressure is how much can the champion push, how much can they exert their will on the lane. Kill threat, how likely are they to get a kill in the lane and beyond. Safety, how safe are they from ganks? Do they have any defensive capabilities for team fights? Just how likely are they going to be able to avoid aggression? Scaling, how well do they do if the game goes on in terms of, their skill scaling, sort of their utility later on in the game, their itemization. And then reliability, how likely is someone to be able to play this champion at an optimal level? So that could be the mechanics of the champion, but it could also be how likely is the champion to get countered in the specific meta that's going on right now? How many answers are there out there, and how popular are those answers? So that's just a really simple thing that I gave you, just to give you a snapshot picture of the type of champion that you're going to be dealing with each one of these. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. I'm not going to go huge into the patch notes. I have an entire video on that, so be sure to watch that if you want the depth. But just as far as it's germane to AD carries, the main thing that you need to know is Akali's probably going to be bad. I predicted in the patch notes that she'd probably have like a 40 to 45% win rate for the first week or two. Eventually she might be okay, but she's going to be really hard to play for a lot of people, and people are just going to be really bad on her, as they usually are on a new release champ. Fiddlesticks is still going to be good, so there's still going to be a lot of poke. You'll still see him a lot. So champions that don't have a lot of sustain in lane might have a problem with him. But he's pretty good. You just have to remember, as an AD carry, if the enemy has a Fiddlesticks, you're going to have to get a quick Silver Sash at some point, probably, if you find him able to get in fear range of you. Fizz is going to be back. He's super strong. A lot of people haven't figured this out. They're not playing him yet, but it's important to recognize, as far as assassins go, that there's going to be Fizzes and Akalis, and a couple of the other lingering assassins like Talon and Zed weren't really touched. So there will still be quite a bit of assassins in the meta, including Lee. They're basically making him into assassin as well. Quinn's still going to be really strong. Didn't touch her very much. Support itemization. Your support will be a little bit weaker as the game starts, but shouldn't matter that much. Okay, and then here's the stuff that really matters for AD carries. This is overall a buff, especially to Stormrazor users. And I did this math in the patch notes video, but basically you're getting a 400 gold discount, and you're sacrificing, that's 350, attack speed is 125. So you're basically giving up 475 gold worth of stats on this item in exchange for getting it 400 faster. And I think that's a really good bargain. It's gonna, because a lot of the power of this is that guaranteed crit that you get in that first pop. Is what makes it really powerful once you complete it. So I think putting this at 2,800 gold is really, really strong. So anyone that can itemize Stormrazor early is going to be in a pretty good place. Essence Reaver is still not that great most of the time. They are giving it 5 more AD, which is nice, but I think a lot of the champions that I had really thought this was going to be good on, like Lucian, for example, just it's not as good because you have to have a very specific kind of ult and it doesn't have any crit scaling. It doesn't have any on-hit scaling. It's just kind of like an awkward item. You know, you need to have something that's proactive, where you can press it, it's on a low cooldown, it starts a fight, and then you just get, you know, you just fight with it. So, like, maybe Sivir might like something like that, where she can ult and run in. But, like, with Lucian, who was one of the prime candidates for this, you just really don't want to start a fight off with your ult. Like, you need to use your ult tactically to try to, you know, when you're trying to run away from people, if you're kiting, or to try to chase people down. Like, you don't want to immediately press your ult and then just start auto-attacking after that. I mean, you even lose some time on this as well, because you have to wait for your ult to finish channeling. And they lowered the uptime on it from 8 seconds to 6 seconds a while ago, so it's okay. I mean, you just won't see it on most champions, though. It's kind of a very niche item. Then they lowered the crit items by 100 gold, so that is going to smooth out the curve for crit aid carries. So crit aid carries are still going to be, you know, they're going to be better, but I still think that champs like, you know, Misfortune will still be decent in the meta. This is a pretty big nerf to Mercurial Scimitar, too. Like, the Quicksilver Sash in the early game is still something you're going to need a lot of time, but at the same time, you know, later on when you complete this, losing 15 AD is a pretty big deal. Now, they are lowering the cost by 300, but you're losing, you know, like 1,000 gold worth of value off of it. I mean, no, not that much, not that much. Like 475, 525. Losing 525 gold value, but it's getting reduced by 300. So you're losing like 225 gold value, so not the end of the world, but it is reducing the power a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the tier list there. So that's just kind of what's informed it. It's like anyone that can use Storm Racer is going to be a lot stronger. Crit users are going to be a bit stronger. So the mages are really, the mages bot lane, like the Swains and the Heimerdingers, are the real losers there. I think they're still viable, but obviously they don't gain anything from the changes, and the 80 carries do. Let's go ahead and get in here. Okay, first up, I moved Quinn up a lot. She wasn't even, she was an honorable mention, and I was just, you know, kind of like, you know, I thought she was very gimmicky. You still don't see her a lot, but they have changed a lot of the build with her, and they've also changed, like the itemization, like the runes, and how you play her as well, and just the meta shifted a little bit as well. So let me pull her up really quickly here. Sometimes this page usually still opens pretty well, even if the stats and itemization one does not. Okay, is this the current one or is this the past one? Previous abilities. Okay. Yeah, that's the past. Those are not current abilities. So I don't know why this page works and the other one doesn't, but that's just what it is. I just want to show you kind of the history here and sort of what happened. So 8.7 was pretty big, and they gave her like a lot of buffs on 8.6. So, you know, I heard Freak saying in his patch notes, oh, well, Quinn's been good for years. Like, no, she hasn't, dude. This is a very recent thing in this meta, and they changed a lot about her. And it's her interaction with very specific runes as well, which we'll talk about here in a second. But look at all these changes. Bug fixes and new things. On this one patch alone, 8.6, just her ultimate got changed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 changes to her ult on one patch. So yeah, in this one, they gave her extra attack damage, attack speed growth, you know, basic attacks in flight will consume Harrier if it comes up. Sky Strike marks all enemies as vulnerables. That's a ton of extra damage. You can't get your channel broken by taking damage. This is huge. So now if you're trying to escape, like if you're split pushing and you're in a tough situation, you can just channel this, and even if they have to crowd control you to stop it, they can't just, you know, auto attack you or whatever. And this is a huge deal, because this was very annoying with Quinn, because she's ostensibly a split pusher, but at the same time, you know, she was fairly easy to shut down to stop her mobility. Now it's much tougher. Then taking damage from minions no longer breaks the channel. From non-minions, so from champions. So pretty much you get to stay in bird form. Before, if you got hit when you were on the bird, it knocked you out. Now it just takes off your bonus movement speed, but you still get to stay in the bird form, which means you can still trigger behind enemy lines and get that burst damage when you know, roll up to them. So that's a huge deal. If you take damage from minions, it doesn't knock you out of bird either, which used to be a thing. you automatically get whenever you back. You get behind enemy lines. You don't have to sit there and, you know, waste 3 seconds channeling it. That's a big deal. It's no longer in combat. It goes on a 3-second cooldown when you're in combat, so you can cast it if you're in combat. You have, you know, longer than 10 seconds for Sky Strike. Yeah, so there's just a lot of stuff there. Huge quality of life buffs back then. You might say, well, why wasn't she a huge deal back then? Because she's not very good against tanks. That's the thing, is she doesn't do as much sustained damage as a lot of the other champions that were really popular back then. So back, you know, in 8.6, a lot of it was about tanks and enchanters in that meta, and she's not good against tanks or enchanters for the most part. Like, she really wants a lot of squishy champions that don't have a lot of defenses. So she's pretty good against assassins to an extent. So yeah, I mean, that's why. They buffed her a lot there. They also buffed her here. And then they buffed her again, or no, it's a nerf on 8.15 a little bit. So she's kind of had this coming for a little bit, but the meta just wasn't quite right for her. And people just weren't really building her correctly. The crit 80 carries really outscaled her and really outshined her for a while until people have kind of figured out this new build. The Stormrazor is very good. So let's go ahead and get into the build. Let's talk about it real quickly here. So what's up with Quinn? Why is she so strong right now, other than getting all of those fixes? Well, the really popular one that I've seen lately is you go Electrocute, Sudden Impact combo, so you basically build her like an assassin. It's very easy to proc Electrocute, because you can just auto use one of your abilities, like your Q or your E, and then just auto again and it procs it. It does a lot of damage. Sudden Impact gives you that lethality, which not only affects your auto attacks, but it also affects your Electrocute and your abilities, which has been a, you know, a staple 1-2 combo of a lot of champions, a lot of burst champions, because the lethality affects the Electrocute proc, because it does physical damage if you are a physical, you know, damage dealer like Quinn. And Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunters, that gives you some extra mobility. Celerity means your first hit's going to hit pretty hard, because you're moving so fast off of the bird that it gives you a ton of extra AD on your first hit. That extra AD off of your first hit, if you have Stormrazors, also translates into a crit. So with Celerity, if you're getting that, you know, 100 extra movement speed, you're going to be getting whatever, 12 extra AD, whatever the number is. And then that's also going to crit, so it's going to be an even bigger hit. So basically, this just means that she flies up and does a ton of burst damage with Electrocute, Sudden Impact, the Celerity combination with Stormrazor proc. And then a lot of times she'll take like Dustblade or Static Shiv as well. So it just does a ton of damage. So I think that Berserker, Stormrazor, and then Dustblade, Ghostblade, that's what I see most of the time. Now she is kind of a mid-game powerhouse. So I think playing her for mid-game is a pretty good option. A lot of people do get the Ghostblade plus Stormrazor so she can run around. I'm not completely sold on the Cleaver. Some more people have been doing Phase Rush too, so that you can stick to people better. There's still a decent amount of people that do Electrocute also. I'm not a Quinn expert, but I think that Electrocute's better. I would go for the mid-game burst damage, but you know, what is this with Phase Rush? What do they get? Coup de grace, Mana Flow. I mean, this is going to give you, like, a little bit more sustained damage, I think, because you're going to have things like Alacrity. Her mana cost is kind of high early on when you transform into your bird. I'm still partial to the Electrocute, though. Electrocute, Ghostblade, Dustblade. Now, that's going to be worse later in the game than if you try to go like Static Shiv, Infinity Edge, but I think you should be trying to close out early as Quinn. And in most ELOs, you're going to be able to fly around and pick people off a lot. It's very difficult to duel her as a ranged champion, too, when you get blinded. And so she's a pretty good counter against like other ranged champions. So that's why she's number one right now, I think, is in a bot lane. You know, I definitely think she was last patch. I just kind of missed the boat on that one because I hadn't played with her or against her, and I just thought she was kind of gimmicky. After playing her a couple of times and against her, You know, she's really, really strong. So I still think that if she's not number 1, she's up kind of near the top. She's still kind of an oddball pick. Just her burst damage and her ability to roam around and snowball is just so hard. And like her, just the damage that she can put out and 1v1 and that blind. If you hit them with the blind, you're just going to win your duels early on. So if you have any sort of support that can chip in and add in any damage, you can get a ton of kills with her. So I think that she's really strong right now. She does have, like, okay sustained damage later on, too. It's not, like, the greatest in the world, but she does get some buffs off of Harrier. She gets, like, extra attack speed. I don't remember how much, but it was a pretty good chunk of attack speed. It was, like, 80% for 2 seconds or something. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so we got her now. Yeah, 80% attack speed for 2 seconds whenever you trigger Harrier. So you got to get these combos correct, right? So when you come in... you want to try to auto-attack first. Sky Strike will come down. That auto-attack, while it's midair, will trigger the Harrier. That gives you the bonuses. So you fly in, auto-attack to trigger Harrier. Vault, auto-attack, trigger Harrier again. Blinding Assault, trigger Harrier. And then, you know, they should pretty much be dead by then. But then you'll have an extra second and a half off of Blinding Assault to just run them down and kill them. So you want to make sure that you're triggering Harrier between each of your attacks. So you don't want to like fly in with behind the lines and vault immediately, which is something that in the past, back when you used to stay in melee form, was like, okay, that was many, many years ago. But that would be wasting a Harrier proc, because this triggers Harrier now. So you want to attack first, so you get the Harrier, and then vault, and then attack again, so you get another Harrier. So you wouldn't want to like fly up, vault, and then just immediately blinding assault without getting any auto attacks in there. You're wasting numerous Harrier procs, which does quite a bit of extra damage. So yeah, I think she's good. Good mobility, good burst damage, decent sustained damage. Not as high as some of the other champions on the list, but still pretty good. You definitely want to try to close it out in the mid game with Quinn. Okay, Jhin. Super strong right now. Probably the most popular AD carry. Let me pull up all analytics here. Yeah, and Quinn's still sitting around 55%. Now, Jhin is, I think, the most popular, right? 31%. Yeah, so he's the most popular. And a really good build on him is Hail of Blades. I explained this in the last video where I thought it was kind of dumb when I first saw that build. But, let's see if Jhin will pop up here. Of course not. How did I... Maybe if I go in through this. Maybe if I try, like, History of Jhin. This feels like blowing on a Nintendo or something back in the day. You're not really sure why it doesn't work. But sometimes if you just press it certain ways, if you know, you blow on it, you tap it a little bit, maybe sometimes it works. If not, I can just explain it. Whatever, it's fine. No. Guess I just got lucky with Quinn. But anyways, the thing about Hail of Blades is it triggers on attack. So when you press the attack button, Hail of Blades triggers, and then by the time that single attack hits them, then you have that extra attack speed. Now, that's not going to matter for a lot of champions because your first attack is not going to benefit from the attack speed. But for Jhin, it matters because that first attack, while it's in midair, you get the attack speed, and that attack speed translates into AD at a pretty good rate. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something by like level 3 or level 4. It was like 20 extra AD, which is a lot. The conversion rate for Jhin. So that means that it is good for short trades. The problem with like a lot of champions with things like Lethal Tempo early on or things like Hail of Blades is attack speed doesn't matter that much early because trades are so small. You know, it's just like you hit them once as an auto attack in lane, you know, when they're trying to hit a minion, or you might hit them a couple of times if your support crowd controls them. You know, you might auto attack them and then, you know, throw a grenade at them or a W or whatever. It isn't going to be one of these, you know, late game, you're sitting there and you're throwing like 8 auto attacks on the tank or something. So attack speed is nice, but it doesn't matter nearly as much as flat AD in the early game. That's why almost everybody will try to rush things like a BF sword, because the AD matters so much, because trades are short. And a lot of times the damage is primarily done with abilities in the laning phase rather than sustained auto attacks. And so Halo Blades is not good on a lot of AD carries for that reason. But for Jhin, because it translates into that raw AD, then it's very, very good. And it translates on the very first attack, which is something I didn't realize until I researched this last patch. So it effectively gives him somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 AD early, which is huge. I mean, it's like 400, 500 gold value at level 1. And it goes up over time, so it scales and it gets better as the game goes on. And then, of course, that extra AD translates into crits and things like that. So he has a very, very nice runing and build path. He also takes, I think a lot of times, he'll be able to take Taste of Blood, which helps him sustain through Harass, like Fiddlesticks Harass. And then he'll take Ravenous Hunter, I think, so that he gains extra health off of his grenades in lane. That's the most common build that I've seen. So yeah, pretty much everybody's on that Halo Blades train. Yeah. Yeah, this is pretty much what I'm recommending for the most part. Yeah, Halo Blades, then you have double sustain in lane with Taste of Blood, Ravenous Hunter. Eyeball Collection is not amazing, but it's okay. It does translate into AD later on, which is great. And then just Celerity, Gathering Storm. Yeah, it just gives you a little bit of extra movement speed, and then when you get that crit and you run really fast, then you get that extra AD, that extra 16 AD or whatever in the late game, which is pretty big. So yeah, I think early on this gives him a ton of extra power as far as just his auto attacks and trading early. He has a really good build path. He can build Stormrazor, which just got buffed, and Rapid Fire Cannon, which also just got buffed, and then he gets Infinity Edge after that. So he's one of the best early game bullies that also scales with, you know, Stormrazor, Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge. Now, Jhin is kind of hard to play. A lot of people screw him up. A lot of people don't understand him conceptually. I see so many AD carries just open up and start casting their ult in a team fight when you really should be up there auto-attacking as much as possible, because your autos are going to do way more than the ultimate does. The ultimate's really just for finishing people off most of the time. I mean, there might be some situations where if your team has a huge advantage and you're just trying to run them down, then you can use your ult to like start a fight. If you just need initiation, but they have nerfed that aspect of Jhin a lot. So they really, you know, have designed him such that you want to try to finish people off with your ult and not start a fight. Okay. So yeah, I still think he's really good. Good bully. Decent scaling in the late game. He does have a problem cutting through tanks later, but he definitely destroys squishies pretty well. And good utility. So a lot of times he'll just go Swiftness, Stormrazor, Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge. Now, Swiftness is the standard, but keep in mind, if they have like a really fed Talon or Zed or, you know, any other type of AD champ, you might have to get Ninja Tabby. But, you know, most of the time, the boot that you really want to get is Swiftness, because that helps you, whenever you get that crit and you get that bonus movement speed, then it gives you even more speed. And he doesn't have very much, see, like, Zet got Tabby there, probably because he was behind, and because they had, like, a Zet, or a Pike. Or let's say no. Oh, they had Jarvan, who's going around dunking him, probably. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes you might have to go off script and get the Tabby, but the Swiftness are usually pretty good. Okay, let's move on. Great lane bully, great itemization runes. It just all aligns for Jhin on this patch for solo queue. Draven is another one, kind of solo queue special. Now he can go Stormrazor early as well. Okay, we get Draven. It's like we're flipping a coin. Maybe we get it, maybe we don't. One of the really strong aspects of Draven, though, is that he gets so much extra damage early on because of plus 65% of his bonus AD. I thought that was... I thought that was his total AD. Anyways, everyone knows Draven. We played against him. Played with him. He just does a ton of damage off his auto attack, scales really well, great early game bully, very good with Stormrazor because his pattern, he doesn't want to have sustained damage. He wants to kill you in 1 or 2 auto attacks. Oh, that's bonus physical. Yeah. Okay. That's in addition to his normal auto attack damage. It does this bonus physical damage. Okay, it makes more sense. So even at like that's right. I don't know why I was confused about that. So even at level 1, you get 35 extra attack damage, basically. And then you get 65% of your bonus AD, so, you know, off of runes and whatever, even if you only have, like, 30 extra bonus AD off of runes and early items and things like that, that would still give you, like, an extra 20, you know, 55, 60 bonus damage on your autos. So that just suits very well for Stormrazor, where you just go up and annihilate people. And this is why Lifesteal is very good on him as well, because this bonus physical damage, also, Lifesteal applies to that. So he gets a lot of benefit out of Lifesteal. So, really good bully in the early game. You know, you could build him probably just Stormrazor Rapid Fire IE if you wanted to, although the Lifesteal, like I said, is historically very good on him. I still think you pretty much have to go Stormrazor early. Most of the time. That's disgusting. Why? Why would you not just get Bloodthirster? It's so much better on Draven than Blade. But anyways, yeah, I think pretty much everybody's going to be going, he didn't. He went Thirster first. So, you know, I'm not a Draven expert, so, you know, I guess if you're in a tougher lane, or if they have Poke, if they have a Fiddlesticks or something, maybe you need to get the Bloodthirster first. But I think that builds like this can also work, where you just go Stormrazor, Rapid, Infinity Edge. This is just such a massive power spike right now, especially it's only cost 2,800 gold. Bloodthirster, I think, still costs 3,500. So yeah, there are a lot of different builds, but ton of damage, really good with Stormrazor, Rapid Fire Cannon, that's what I would recommend most of the time. So Draven is hard to play, but if you can play, give him a try. You know, he goes Conqueror, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Celerity, Gathering Storm, so kind of unique runes, but this just sort of emphasizes he wants those really quick trades, because this falls off quickly on ranged champions. You can't refresh it. But having that extra true damage on Conqueror is pretty nice, because once again, the bonus that you get off of that Q is not spell damage, it's built into your auto attack itself, and so that, you know, every auto attack is going to be doing that extra true damage. Although Conqueror does technically give the bonus to spells too. Either way, ton of damage early, great late game bully, decent sustained damage late game, really hard to play, but he's almost always going to be top tier in solo queue. He's very good. There's a reason that Tower 1, you know, mains Draven. There's a reason that a lot of Draven one-tricks get higher than almost any other 80 carry that gets one-tricked. It's just because he's very, very strong, especially if you snowball. But even if you don't, he still does a lot of damage. Okay, Jinx has risen up quite a bit. Big reason for this is tanks are kind of creeping their way back in a little bit. Stormrazor's pretty good with her because she can get the extra range on her rockets to make sure she gets that first hit. She has pretty good wave clear in lane too. She's received several buffs over the last little bit. Okay, good. Can I see history, or is that asking too much? It's asking too much. Okay, let me see. All right. So on 8.13, yeah, this was a pretty big one. They made it to where her, the 10% bonus AD that you get from fish bones, which are your rockets, can now critically strike as well. So for some reason, it couldn't crit before, but now it can. So if you would have hit them for, you know, 200, and some of that, like 10% of that was off of that bonus, then you would have only hit them for... the critical portion would have only been for 180 instead of 200. So it's not like an insane difference, but it does add up a lot, especially because Fishbones are AoE. So the rockets themselves can hit multiple targets. And if you get Hurricane, which you should always, each one of those Hurricane bolts with Fishbones is actually a rocket. So each one of those explodes and does area of effect as well. So, you know, if you're firing into 3 people or whatever, you're really getting 9 hits off of that if they're tightly bunched up. Because the main rocket is going to explode and hit the other people. So that's 3 hits off of the main rocket. And then the little secondary rockets are going to hit the people on the side and explode and hit all 3 people as well. So each rocket is going to hit 3 people. There are 3 rockets. That's 9 hits. So that does start adding up quite a bit if each one of those can crit or not. So that's a big deal. The AD ratio on Zap going up is okay. It does some like pretty decent burst damage now. Yeah, that's all they tinkered with for a while. They kind of buffed her up on 8.2 as well. But she has good range in the early game. She has good wave clear with her rocket. She takes towers pretty quickly, and she snowballs really hard. So if you win a fight, you know, then you get all this crazy bonus attack speed and move speed, and you're probably just gonna crush people. And then she scales super hard. She's one of the highest scaling AD carries in the game, probably with someone like Twitch, where, you know, once you get the Storm Razor plus Hurricane plus Infinity Edge, it's just off to the races. You're going to completely obliterate people. And, of course, she has that Mega Death Rocket, Super Mega Death Rocket, that just completely deletes people as well, too, on a pretty low cooldown, I think, right? Yeah, 90 seconds cooldown. So, yeah, you can just get random snipes across the map. You can just throw that in at the start of a team fight to crush people. Now, it does do, like, missing health, so obviously you want to try to execute people with it, but it's really nice. And an underestimated part of her kit also are chompers. And they changed these around near the end of last season where they activate faster, I think. But it's really good to chain this together with other supports that have crowd control. So, you know, if your Leona engages on somebody, or Thresh hooks somebody, or, you know, Fiddlesticks fears somebody, Rakan ults onto somebody. If you throw those chompers down, you know, it's an extra 1.5 seconds of CC. So it's kind of like Caitlyn with her traps, where last season they deal more. Well, I don't know if they don't deal as much damage as Caitlyn trap headshot stuff, but it's a similar concept where she has CC that you can chain together with your support CC. So that's pretty strong. So decent poke, that's pretty cheap, good CC chain, good finisher, then is insanely high scaling. You know, auto attacks, right? Whereas if you're using the minigun, this is great for taking Barons, it's great for taking towers. You get 130% extra attack speed. If you're using Fishbones, then you gain all of this extra range and extra AD and, you know, area of effect attacks. So that's really, really nice. Now, the problem with Jinx, though, is, of course, that she doesn't have escape. She is vulnerable to assassins. So that's definitely something to consider. However, you know, kind of these peelers, she's very, very good against tanks, as I mentioned before. So, you know, if they have a tank, she's going to be able to just chew through them with that minigun a lot of the time. So she can cut down people like a Dr. Mundo or like a Sejuani. But she needs peel. With Critical Strike being a lot better now, though, you know, I've seen some more Janna lately. Janna's also very good against Fiddlesticks, at least later on in the game. So we're seeing Janna start to creep back in a little bit. I still think that Lulu's pretty good. You're seeing Sona. Now, Sona doesn't have as much peel as some of these other options, but I think some of the peelers, Fiddlesticks, can peel pretty well for her. So if you have a support that can peel, then Jinx is kind of off to the races. And a lot of her competition has kind of been nerfed out quite a bit, right? So, like, Caitlyn is still not really back, doesn't do enough sustained damage. Jhin and Miss Fortune are popular right now, but she can wave clear to keep up with them with her rockets early on. And later on, she's going to do way, way, way more sustained damage. And she can bully out champions like Twitch early on because she has that longer range. and just better trading power early on with her rockets. So I think that she is very good. If the enemy has just a ton of CC or assassins and you don't have much peel, she can be really bad. But if you can protect the Jinx, I think she's the best, like, super hyper carry in the game right now. So I've got her pretty high for that reason. Okay, and, you know, part of that, once again, is meta-dependent. Assassins are still popular, like I mentioned before, but we're starting to see more tanks creep in. They've buffed the on-hit crit items quite a bit now, so champions like Misfortune aren't going to benefit as much from that as others. And we're starting to see some of the enchanters come back into the fold because crit is becoming a little bit better. So I think all that bodes well for Jinx. All right, Misfortune still going to be really strong, very popular right now in solo queue. So she's got a 53% win rate, pretty high pick rate as well. She still does a lot of early game damage if you can hit those Qs on people correctly. I think Dark Harvest is still where everybody's going with her. Sorry, just typing out Misfortune here. Go get some pro builds here. So not played a lot in the professional scene. I'm really not quite sure why that is. I think it's just that she is pretty vulnerable to CC, kind of like Jinx. She doesn't have a lot of mobility. But it looks like some people are going back towards Comet. I do kind of like the Dark Harvest build. I think it fits more with just kind of doing that burst damage early on. But I suppose Comet would give you... Let me see, how are people ruining this? I mean, it does give you Mana Flow Ban and Scorch, which is really nice. I don't know. I still think that Dark Harvest is stronger. I talked about that a lot in the last video with the math. But, like, you just collect so many souls, it just gives you so many more opportunities for, like, really big, meaningful hits. And then later on, like, it helps you chunk out towers and champs. You also get Taste of Blood for more sustain. And Ultimate Hunter, so that you have your ult up a lot more for fights. And then you can still get things like Celerity and Gathering Storm if you want to. So, I don't know, I guess on the flip side... These guys still getting Ultimate Hunter. They're getting Ultimate Hunter and Cheap Shot. I guess you still could get Taste of Blood. I don't know. It's tough. It's basically like you're getting very similar runes in both of them. It's just like, would you want Comet, which is probably a little bit better, like really early on, but then Dark Harvest is going to be better, a lot better later on. I don't know for sure, but I do think that both builds are probably pretty good. And, you know, you just get Duskblade, Ghostblade, and pretty much you just bully people out early on. And then you want to make sure that you have a team fight comp. She's very bad at dueling other 80 carries most of the time. So if you're against Draven or Jhin, or certainly Quinn, if they try to 1v1 you, you're going to die. So you want to make sure that you have a team fight comp, you know, something that can start a fight, a Rakan, a Sejuani, a Leona, something like that, and you're grouping up as 5, and then, you know, you just wait until you have that great chance to channel your ult. So she's great with like a wombo combo team, but she's pretty bad if the enemy team has a bunch of skirmishers and they're going to force you to try to like 1-3-1 or something like that to deal with them. You know, if they have like a, I don't know, a Camille jungle and a top lane Fiora or Singed or something like that, and then like a mid lane Talon. You know, if they just are never going to be grouping up for 5, if they're always going to be trying to skirmish, then that can be tough in the mid to the late game. But if you can force those team fights, then she can be pretty strong. Okay. Now we're going down to Tier 2. So this is just for, like, solo queue, what I think works the best. And there are a lot of different types. You've got your hyperscaling, you know, auto attacker. You have kind of your early game bullies with Misfortune, Draven, Jhin, and then you've got your sort of your roamer mid-game type of champ with Quinn. So I think that's quite a bit of diversity. I mean, I think the AD carry position's in a really healthy spot right now for the most part, so I wouldn't want to see too many changes down here. Going into Tier 2, I think that Xayah's pretty good. You know, she can benefit from the Stormrazor Rapid Fire Infinity Edge. She has quite a bit of utility. I expect to see her a lot in pro play. You're still seeing her quite a bit, but she just can throw down quite a bit of AoE teamfight damage with the feathers. And then when she does that Blade Caller and pulls them all back in, it's just completely game-breaking if she hits multiple people with that. And then she's also got her ultimate to help keep her safe from a lot of different engages, because it not only makes her untargetable and gives her a chance to reposition, but she can also get that stun off really easily off of her feathers. So yeah, she's having a pretty good time so far on this patch. A lot of people are going lethal tempo. This is good for scaling later on to the game, and the biggest reason is it lets you get those feathers down a lot faster. It's just all about the feathers. So I think that's pretty strong. I always thought that press the attack was pretty good too, because it made your Blade Caller do a lot more damage, but I guess it's more important just to get a lot of the feathers down first. So yeah, it's just lethal tempo, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Gathering Storm, Absolute Focus. Obviously really good with Rakan, and Rakan's amazing in pro play right now as well, so that's part of it. But I just think that even, you know, by herself, she's really strong. She's one of the harder AD carries to play, because you have to position correctly to get the roots off of your feathers. Make sure that you're hitting them with all of them. But she's really strong, good, versatile. Not amazing early on, although she does have pretty nice wave clear early on. So I guess I'll change this to lethal tempo, since that's what a lot of people are doing, and that does make sense. Yeah, just Stormrazor Rapid Fire Infinity. Good user of that. Just not as much of a bully, can't snowball as hard early, but excellent team fighter. Excellent, especially at sort of higher level play. She's going to be good when people can actually play her correctly. But, I mean, she could be tier 1, certainly. But I just always cut it off at 5 people at tier 1 and then 10 for tier 2. And I just think that she's just a bit harder to pull off than some of these other champs that are on here, but she certainly is very good. Twitch is another one. It's just like a solo queue warrior. He could easily be tier 1 if you're very good on Twitch. It doesn't seem like Twitch would be hard to play, but I see people fail on him a decent, not a lot, but like an okay amount, enough to where I put him at tier 2. Now, let me see. People might switch over to start with Stormrazor on him. People had been doing Blade the Ruined King, which is why I had him a bit lower, because the Stormrazor people are going to be able to bully him out earlier on. But Blade the Ruined King is so good on him. Yeah, you still have to kind of go Blade. He does have a good win rate, but a pretty low sample size. And then as far as like win rate here, he's like at 52, which is pretty nice. So Twitch is very, very good. It's just he can get bullied out early, and if you're not great with positioning, you know, he can get destroyed. And then people just later on try to open up too close. They don't use the max range on him. But, you know, once you get the Blade the Ruined King plus Hurricane, you just completely crush people later on. He's invisible. He sneaks up, kills people. He's kind of like Quinn, where he can just roll around and pick people off. But he also has the option of doing a ton of late game team fight damage. So he's probably the best champion if you can get to, you know, 2 or 3 items. He's right up there with Jinx. He may not do quite as much like raw, you know, destruction as Jinx, but it's pretty dang close. And the fact that he's invisible and can shoot from 850 range is pretty insane. So I think that Twitch is still really, really good. If you can just get out of the laning phase and not get completely obliterated, then he's going to be super strong. So it's just Blade the Ruined King, Hurricane, probably just Infinity Edge after that. Like, you could go Stormrazor, but I think if you're going to go Stormrazor now, it needs to be first item in a lot of cases. Okay, so Twitch, super strong, great roaming, just kind of weaker in the early game. Heimerdinger, you know, a lot of the AD carries got better, so I just dropped the mages down a little bit. Heimerdinger is also extremely hard to play correctly. I see a lot of Heimers fail. If you're really good on Heimerdinger, I think he's still going to be strong, particularly in organized play. But for solo queue, it's just a little bit rougher. They haven't directly nerfed him, but they did buff the other AD carries, which gives him more competition at that slot. And they nerfed teleport, which is something that, you know, he wants to take early on. So Dinger, he's alright, he's playable, he's fun, he's interesting, but I think that there are other options in town now. Swain, he'd still be played in the 80 carry slot. He's alright. I mean, he might be a good choice if you have like all AD on your team. So if you have like a Kindred jungle and a Talon middle and a top lane Darius or something like that, then maybe you would consider Swain as an option. A lot of the AP, like damage dealing 80 carries, aren't super strong right now. There are people who have an AP option, so like Xayah, who, you know, could go something like Ginsu's Nasher's Death Cap, and Varus, who can do that build also. And then Corki, of course, is like AP options bottom. Aren't that great. So if you do need an AP champion bottom, I think that Swain or Heimer are one of the better ones. Swain starts off a little bit on the weak side. It's kind of hard to last clear. He has, or to clear. He has some mana issues early on, but if you get through the early game, then he can definitely be a beast as the game unfolds. So he has had several nerfs over the last like 5 patches or so, but I still think he's a decent, respectable option. He does have a lot of CC, good damage, good sustain later on. You just need to make sure that you have a good like sustained physical damage dealer like a Kindred or something like that to help you take out Barons and towers and things like that, because he's terrible at objective control, but he's really, really good at team fights. So that's just sort of the trade-off with him. So yeah, I think he's pretty decent, but not quite as high as he was a few patches ago, because the 80 carries have gotten stronger. Ezreal, I still think is really strong if you're really good on Ezreal. Now, obviously, he doesn't benefit from a lot of these changes. He doesn't get Storm Razor, Rapid Fire Cannon. If people are just standing still, you know, just right-clicking late game, all of these champions are going to beat him at that, right? So, like, you know, Draven, Jinx, Xayah, Twitch, all these champions are going to crush him in a flat firefight. But he is a great solo queue warrior just because he's so safe and versatile. So even if your support is just like a total turkey and they just are not like helping to peel you at all, or they're just making bad decisions, like they're just roaming and like not converting anything and just leaving you alone in lane or whatever, Ezreal can still farm with his Qs. It's like he's always relevant, is what I like about him. Like, he farms really well. He has some pretty good utility with his ult. It can do decent burst damage in like a team fight. It's a great way to start a fight. Not to start it, but to follow up the initial initiation, right? So like your Rakan goes in to start a fight, you can just channel your ult and it just immediately will chunk a lot of people out, and then you can just go forward and proceed from there. He has really good poke damage. There's not a lot of poke here, and there's not a lot of sustain out there. Like you're starting to see Sona and Soraka a little bit more, but his poke hurts a lot, especially with sieging. So, like, champions like Caitlyn aren't super popular right now, so, like, siege comps are kind of tough. Xerath sees some play, but, like, in general, there just are not that many, like, champions that are really good at sieging and poking that are very popular right now in pretty much every role. And so, Ezreal can serve that purpose, where he's very, very good at poking with his Q. He's good at surviving. He's good against AD assassins because he can get Iceborne Gauntlet. So he just has a lot of utility about him at the price of not having as much raw power, but just the safety and utility, I still think makes him worth it. So if you're really, really good on Ezreal, you know, you can definitely win a lot of games with him. But I moved him down just a little bit. I think I had him at the top of tier 2 just because all of the other 80 carries got a bit stronger on this patch. All the other ones above him. All right, Tristana, I think a lot of people are still probably sleeping on Tristana. I still feel like she can be really strong. She can skirmish early. You know, she's a pretty good user of the Storm Razor Rapid Fire Cannon Infinity Edge build. And she's kind of safe. So she's kind of like Ezreal in the sense that she's safe, fairly weak early on, but then she scales super hard as the game goes on. I just think that she's going to get overshadowed by Jinx. Just because Jinx has a much better laning phase, I think, because Tristana starts off with 525 range. Now, it does go up quite a bit as the game goes on, but that takes time to do that. Now, she can do, you know, pretty good all-in damage if she gets that bomb on you. You know, if she jumps in, gets the bomb on you, and then jumps back out, so she has a lot of utility. She does get resets off of her W. Her ult does a ton of damage. It's like 300 damage, like with 1 point in your ult at level 6, which is just like ridiculous. So she does have quite a good chunk of dueling power combined with mobility and resets, combined with like pretty good tank breaking and team fighting later, because she gets like 110% attack speed off of her Q upgrade. So I just feel like Jinx is going to overshadow her, though, because Jinx has the better early game and better AoE team fighting later on. But Trist is a lot safer because she not only has the jump away, but she has her ult as well. So I think we won't see a ton of Trist because that 525 range especially is kind of tough into things like Draven or Jhin early on. But if you can get out of the laning phase, she's still going to be strong. I just feel like if you want to play somebody that's like going to be pretty terrible in the laning phase, but is going to be a powerhouse later, I'd probably just play Twitch. But Triss does have that safety. So, you know, she's bad in the laning phase, but she's safer than Twitch. Twitch can get away pretty easily with his cloaking early on, if you can sniff out the ganks. But Triss is interesting. She's okay. You know, I think midway through tier 2 is probably a safe assessment of her. But if you're very good on her, if you do get ahead, she can be really strong. She's one of the more versatile champions on the list. Xayah, I don't think Kai'Sa's that great right now. Have been seeing her some in pro play. But I think that people are moving away from the AP build, from what I understand. They're doing like Stormrazor, like Hurricane, Blather and King, I think is what a lot of people, at least what I've seen in pro play. Yeah. I don't know, they're still getting Ginsu's just later. Like Stormrazor, Ginsu, Rapid Fire. This just feels super awkward to me build-wise because, like, Ginsu doesn't benefit at all from crit. Nothing on that item crits. Like, and you're not getting Infinity Edge by your third item when you're going crit, like, Rapid Fire for critting. I mean, I guess she's just getting Stormrazor just so that she can keep up with other AD carries, basically, because if they have one and you don't, and just like Ginsu's is pretty bad as a first item, but they want to get it later on. I don't know, like, to me, the thing that made Xayah really good is that she was the AP build. The fact that you could pull her in when the rest of your team has, like, full AD, you could do a lot of AP, and it was just very difficult to itemize, you know, with her. And so when you could go Ginsu's, Nashor's, Deathcap, that was a very unique kind of build that only like she and Varus could use. That had a ton of synergies. It made her really strong. But now if you're just gonna go Stormrazor, like Rapid Fire Ginsu's, I just feel like just play a champion that's better with that in solo queue. You know, if you want a Stormrazor champion, why aren't you playing Jhin or like Draven or Quinn or, you know, any of the other Xayah Xayah. Any of the other champs that just use that item better and just can itemize better. You know, I feel like she really, really needs Ginsu's because it's like her passive with Ginsu's is what makes her a unique and interesting champion. But she was just too strong when that item was too strong. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, we might see her some more. I just feel like she doesn't have a lot of utility outside of being able to do a lot of auto attack magic damage, pretty much. And it looks like a lot of people have gone back to Fleet. I really liked PTA on her, but maybe that's just too greedy now. Because she's pretty terrible in the laning phase. She doesn't have a lot of abilities that do burst damage. She's really just an auto attacker. She's kind of like Vayne, a less mobile Vayne that did a ton of magic damage. So I just feel like her unique identity has kind of been snuffed out a little bit. I feel like they need to do, I don't know. Ginsu's was so strong when she was with it, though. Maybe they could give the AP back a little bit on Ginsu's, or just buff something about, excuse me, her specifically. I don't know. She's okay. It's not like she's bad. I just feel like there are a lot of games where you would want to play something else. How did she do in pro games so far this week? It looks like about 50-50, so she's like okay, you know. She's alright. I mean, I guess that's okay for her to be average. Like, she doesn't have to be at the very top. I just feel like that was a really unique kind of niche that she could fulfill, which was magic damage from the 80 carry slot. I don't know if this is historical about, like, all season. Okay, maybe we can change this here. 8.14. I don't know what that item is. Might be Death Cap. I don't know. She's okay. If you're good on her, you can still win with her. You can still play her. But I think that I would still probably go the AP build. But, you know, maybe going Stormrazor is a little bit better. Okay, Lucian is somebody who has definitely fallen from grace quite a bit. He's still viable. I think he's still hovering around like a 50% win rate, right? Yeah, he's at like 50. I think that happened to Lucian is he lost a lot of his wave clear. And when they nerfed Essence Reaver down to 6 seconds from 8 seconds, it actually hurt him quite a bit more than I thought. And just Essence Reaver is just a really weird logistical item to get on him. And he was just a product of, like, crit itemization was so terrible that anyone that didn't use crit was going to be stronger. And he was a good press the attack user, but now that crit's back, he still does pretty decent damage early on. Just his build path of going like Blade into Cleaver, which is what he does most of the time, I feel like just isn't quite as much raw power as Stormrazor. They buff Stormrazor quite a bit, which is the thing too. So, you know, a lot of the top champions, if they don't use Stormrazor, then they're going to be weak, and you don't want to get Stormrazor on him. It just doesn't synergize very well with this kit. Now, he is winning a lot in solo queue. That's a lot of games. That's 1,300 games, at least at the Challenger level. So, really high up in Challenger, he can get picked, although in Pro Play, no. He's like 1 and 2. And then in solo queue, he's about 50%. So, you know, the statistics are kind of wonky, right? But he can be decent. Like, he has a combination of mobility and pretty good sustained damage, so he's sort of like a Vayne. But with a much better early game. But who is a little bit worse at taking down tanks later on. So he has a unique and interesting niche. It's just the fact that he has that 500 range is sort of rough. But he can still be pretty strong in the right circumstances. Okay, Sivir is somebody that I think is starting to get a little bit more attention. Getting a bit stronger. I don't think she's like overpowered or anything. Where is Sivir on here? But she's quietly going up to about 52%, which is pretty good. Stormrazor's nice. Just having the you know, the mobility to be able to run in. Having her utility is good. The wave clear is really nice later on into the game. And I have seen some pretty good Sivers. Like, she's a good combination with something like a Fiddlesticks, like in a push lane where you just push people in hardcore all the time. She's pretty good against Fiddlesticks, too, because you can use your spell shield to gain a lot of mana back. So there are certain matchups that are very good for her now. I think that probably Lethal Tempo, because the more you... I guess the Boomerang Blade, or the Ricochet is based on number of attacks rather than a certain timing window. But yeah, I think more people are starting to go like Stormrazor into kind of crit items. Like Stormrazor, Rapid Fire. Now some people are also getting Essence Reaver, which I'm not sold on that. I think the Stormrazor build is better. Because remember, like, each one of her Ricochet things can crit. So that's a really nice thing about Stormrazor is whenever you get that first auto attack down, you activate Ricochet and auto attack, you're guaranteeing that your first entire, like, bouncing session is going to crit, which is a really big deal to start a team fight like that, or to, like, wave clear a minion wave. So I would probably just go Stormrazor, Rapid Fire, Infinity Edge, but I guess if you want to be a split pusher, you could also go Phantom Dancer. So, you know, she's okay. She's not, like, insanely powerful or anything. She has, like, virtually no pro presence. She does have some, though. She's 2-2. But I think she's starting to creep back in. She's a sleeper. I don't think she's overpowered, but I think she's a little bit better than people might suspect right now. Okay, we're almost ready, dear. She's ready to go get some dinner. And then Brand is kind of the other mage. I would probably rather have Heimerdinger or Swain right now in the bot lane if you want to do a bot lane mage. But Brand is still, like, okay. If they have a lot of melee champs, then Brand can be better. It's just a lot more people are playing range champions in a ton of different roles. And that means they can spread out a lot easier from his ult, and it's not going to trigger as much. So the fact that, like, you're seeing, you know, Kindred in the jungle, you're seeing, you know, the rise of champions like Aurelion Sol or Orianna, TF are starting to come back into the mid lane, kind of these control and roam mages. It's not all melees in the mid lane anymore. You know, even top lane, like, Quinn is very popular right now, top lane. You're starting to see a little bit of a resurgence of Gnar. Gnar's still not, like, amazing top, but, I mean, you're still seeing a healthy top lane of melee champs, right? You've got your Dariuses and your Garens and things like that. But in solo queue, at least, ranged supports are also really popular right now. You're seeing, like, Sona and Nami are super strong, super popular. Champs right now, Fiddlesticks. Fiddlesticks might as well have, like, 1,000 range because of those crows. Rakan has so much mobility, he can get away. So, you know, I just feel like, in solo queue at least, that Brand is losing a little bit of his power because of that. And his win rate, too. I mean, it's not just how I feel about it. His win rate was at, like, 52 or 53% at one point. But that's fallen a little bit. Even though he didn't get any direct nerfs, it's just the meta has shifted against him a bit. But he can still work. Okay, honorable mentions really quickly, and then we'll move on. Vlad, you can play him bot. He didn't get any nerfs or anything. I just feel like he's a lot less consistent than champions like Swain or Heimerdinger or even Brand. I see so many people screw that champion up early on. But he does have really nice sustain. So you can still play him. Just so his itemization too, like the Shirelia's got nerfed pretty hard, which is when Vlad was in his heyday, like 3 or 4 patches ago. It was with the new Shirelia's before that got nerfed. So he's slowly been sort of slipping after that, and there might be some bad matchups for him too. But part of it's also just crit 80 carries, people realizing they are still pretty good, making a comeback, figuring out new builds on other champions, like Halo Blades Jhin, Dark Harvest, Misfortune, things like that. So there are just better options down there. Yasuo does benefit from the crit on this patch. I just feel like a lot of people are really bad on Yasuo, but he can work maybe bot lane if you have like an Alistar or a Rakan or something else that gives a nice knock-up. You do have a lot of kill threat, level 6. But, you know, early game aggression champions, things like Jhin, Draven, stuff like that can be pretty rough. And then Fiddlesticks is very good against him too. You can poke him out in lane. His wind wall doesn't stop Fiddlesticks' ult. It doesn't stop Fiddlesticks' fear. It can block his E later on, but his E is going to be up a lot more in the laning phase than your wind wall. So he's still going to be able to harass you and push you in. And then Janna just crushes him. And I think Janna is going to be one of the fastest rising supports that everyone just kind of forgot about. She's still creeping back up. She's back at about 51%. She's good. She's very good with Jinx. She's very good against a lot of melee assassins. She did get a lot of nerfs, right, Rory? But she's still pretty good. So, yeah, I think that Yasuo is okay, but he could still have some problems. Varus, I wouldn't play Varus right now. I know people have been trying other builds on him. I'm just not... He just doesn't, like, his best build is the on-hit build, and that's been nerfed so much with the Rage Blade. I just think that he's not a very good Storm Razor user. You got your toy, Rory? So yeah, I wouldn't Varus. He's alright, but I think there are better options. You know, Rengar bot lane could still be a thing if you want to kill lane. He's pretty good with Storm Razor, but probably better options. Irelia's been nerfed a lot, and she got buffed a little bit last patch. I just think that a lot of these bruiser champs, as I mentioned before, just aren't going to be that great. And if you want to go for a non-AD carry, just stick with Heimer, Swain, or Brand, if that's something that you really have to do. Maybe Vlad, but these other ones are not going to be as strong. Now, Vayne, right, Rory? Oh, she's peeping. Are you peeping, Rory? Are you ready? Are you ready to go to dinner? Yes. Vayne's okay. If they have a lot of tanks, she can be pretty good. She did get a nerf, or a buff, rather, fairly recently. She's bad in the laning phase, but she's great at crushing people later. I think a lot of people are still doing, like, the Gensu's, Blatherer and King build, which is nice. It does give you some lifesteal in lane, gives you a nice single-item power spike, and then the Gensu's allows you to trigger it several times later on. So once she completes those 2 items, she is very strong. But she has, her first item power spike is not as strong as a lot of other options. And she can get bullied out really hard in the laning phase. But she's looking a little bit more viable than she has been in a long time. So the fact that Caitlyn hasn't come back in this meta bodes very well for her also. So, and also the fact that Kai'Sa is a lot worse, because Kai'Sa was strictly just a better Vayne for a while there. But now if you just want your high mobility, like, really strong auto attacker, she can be good. I still think that, like, if you want that type of thing, that Twitch or Jinx could be better. But she is a lot more mobile, so she's a lot more versatile than those champions are. She just doesn't do as much, like, upfront super burst damage. And she doesn't have as much teamfight presence, but she's a really good duelist. So I think she has a very specific niche where she can be good if you're extremely good on her. And you're going to be able to win your laning phase or at least go even, then I think that this is one of the better patches for Vayne in a long time. So I don't think necessarily that she's amazing, but once again, under the right circumstances, sure, she can be a very good niche pick. Kog'Maw, the on-hit stuff is really rough. Just play Jinx or Twitch if you want like a super hyper carry. Ashe is an interesting case because she does have a good initiate. Varus is not in an amazing spot right now. We are seeing a bit more Ashe pick in pro play. So, you know, Ashe could be okay. I think people are still probably doing the Blatherer and King build on her. She's getting a bit more popularity. So if you do need some kind of engage on your team, then Ashe can be good. You know, because junglers aren't running engage as much right now with, you know, the popularity of champions like Graves and Kindred. And then some of the supports aren't running it, especially in the pro scene with like Tom Kench can't really engage. Braum has a harder time engaging. So if you don't have engage on your team and you want that from your 80 carry slot, she could be okay. What was that? Oh. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you very much for going through. The final two, Kalista and Caitlyn, are just too far out of the meta. They just don't have good runes. They don't have good items right now. Like, yeah, Storm Razor, like Caitlyn, could be okay, but I just feel like there are still going to be better choices. She needs a little bit of help. Just her runes. She just does not have good runes compared to some of the other champs. And her base stats, especially her attack speed and her attack speed growth, are just really, really low for the kinds of lanes and interactions that are going on out there. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, if you really like the content on the channel, to like, subscribe. It'll let you know whenever I come up with new content, which I do pretty much every day. I try to do a new guide or a new coaching session or just something fresh for you. So check out the rest of the stuff on the channel as well. Like I said, I have tier lists for the support. Just finished the 80 carry one right now. I'm going to do mid lane, top lane, jungle also at some point this patch. And come check out the stream sometime. It starts around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to have you. Great community. We usually have a good time on there. And I'll see you next time. Have a good day.